There's a part of me that I struggled with for years. I was sexually abused as a young girl, was in a bad marriage, and I got divorced. So I moved to Georgia, took my kids. I was freshly divorced. But what I really was doing was moving to Atlanta to run away. But over time in Georgia, I began to see things differently because of my children. They had a hunger for God and they would go to church. And when I surrendered to God, God began to do things in my life that I had never imagined. It took me leaving the familiar to come to a place where I thought it was going to be one way, but God showed me, no, I had something else greater for you. And even in that part of my life, as my life changed, I met my husband and I invited him to church. And I was so glad. One of the things that made me so proud is that I wasn't hungry for the relationship. I was more hungry for God in the middle. I was so more hungry for God and what God was doing in me. As I would sit there and we would talk about life, and God spoke to us and we got married, because I knew that even though I was broken and hurt before and let down before, God still was in the midst of all the things that He had for my life. And I had to believe it. But I knew that there was something else pulling at me. And I remember talking to my pastor and he said, I saw you struggling for the last couple months. You've been struggling. But I knew something was different. And I answered my call and we talked about me being called to ministry. And I remember so clearly the day that I was getting ordained, and I told my husband, I said, you're gonna have to pray now more than ever. And there was a time in my yes to God where my marriage was challenged. Even though I was full-fledged, walking in ministry, serving God, after being married to my best friend, we had a separation. Even in the midst of the separation, I was still seeking what God had next for me. And I remember scrolling on social media and I ran across Call Coach Institute, and I ran across it and I looked at it and I said, no, this is not for me. And I remember it came across again months later. It showed up again on my feed. I'm walking through a separation and I'm still seeking God and I'm still searching. And it showed up and I paused and I looked at it. Call Coach Institute. I said, this is the same very thing that showed up last year. I said, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. So I did it, and it was so rich, the value in it. And I remember when I joined, I said, I'm going to give it my all. I said, God, if you brought me to this, I'm going to trust you through this. I'm going to believe without a shadow of a doubt that this is it, even in the midst of me going through a separation in my own marriage. I knew, I said, God, you're up to something. You're doing something different. And the enemy wants to destroy it, but the devil is a liar. And I remember going through that program and just shining with so much gratitude, the desire and the hunger to begin to coach women, because now I had a foundation. I had the tools, the solid tools to show me that I can do this. I was on fire, became more on fire for God, because I believe in that program is where I began to tap into my purpose, my true purpose. Every time I would end one of the calls or one of the sessions, I would sit there and just cry and tell God, thank you. And it was during that time that me and my husband started having conversations about, working on our marriage. And now here me and my husband were back together where we're supposed to be. And I tell everyone that is because of God and my obedience and His obedience that God mended our marriage. And I also said, how can I be a coach to women who are also in these places but not walk the walk and talk it? It's not going to always be a walk in the park. I have learned, even in the times, I think I've learned more now going through my journey, that it's all for a reason. Everything works out for the good. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to just stand still and allow God to do what God needs to do while I continue to say yes to God on my journey to being a called coach. To this day, it makes me humble even more just thinking about, what if I would have said, no to the things that God put in front of me. I would not be here today walking in purpose. Even now, I'm planning my very first event called Night of Hope. I would have never done this if I didn't believe that I was worthy. And I believe that God had to continue to impart in me, continue to remind me that, daughter, you're confident, you are worthy. I believe in you. You can do it. God loves me so much that he says, daughter, I am going to continue to elevate you into those spaces where I want you to be. Not where anybody else wants you to be, but where I want you to be. Because you know what? You are called for this, and you are made for this, and you have exactly what these women need. And I'm wild. I'm wild by God.